Silo doors groan open. Seconds later, the night explodes. Missiles scream skyward, trailing fire behind them. Across continents, the horizon burns. Humanity has only minutes left. The nuclear apocalypse is here. 0 hour. It happens almost too fast to register. Warning satellites over the Pacific and Siberia scream as dozens of heat signatures rise through the clouds. Then hundreds, then thousands. Early warning radars in Alaska, Greenland, and Kaluga light up like neon billboards. For a heartbeat, the world's supercomputers assume it's all a glitch. That is, until they realize launches are actually coming from everywhere, all at once. 30 seconds later, klaxons blare across continents. Deep underground in Wyoming and Orenburg, in the deserts of Inner Mongolia, and the plateaus of Rajasthan, silo doors rumble open. Hydraulic arms lift massive steel lids that haven't moved in decades. In the oceans, ballistic missile submarines, the hidden leg of every nuclear triad, receive coded bursts confirming the unthinkable. The other nuclear powers have received full release authorization. Their hatches slide open in turn, columns of seawater exploding upwards as missiles breach the surface, trailing white plumes into the night. T+1 minute. 60 seconds into the dawning apocalypse, the first bombers scramble into the air from bases in Louisiana, Siberia, and France. Their pilots know it's a pointless mission. Once the first missiles, already in the air, hit their targets, there won't be many viable runways, refueling tankers, or viable command chains left intact for them to return to. It doesn't matter. Training and instinct override their doubts as the engines screech skyward anyway. Then comes a cascade of signal intercepts. Early warning systems feed back into other systems. Automated retaliation networks designed to ensure no country dies alone detect the launches and respond in kind. The world's communication networks are soon openly drowning in emergency alerts and conflicting orders. EMP flashes ripple through the upper atmosphere as some nations detonate warheads prematurely to blind incoming missiles. In an instant, satellite links falter and the world's digital gateway to itself begins to vanish. T+3 minutes. By minute 3, coastal defense radars pick up submarine-launched ballistic missiles rising from every ocean. These are the first ones to hit, needing only 10 to 15 minutes to cross their arcs. Intercontinental missiles take longer, sometimes up to 25 to 35 minutes from launch to impact. But there is no long in this scenario. The burden of impending existential doom leaves little time for comprehension, much less evacuation. When the missiles first rise, the world's leaders have minutes, 7 if they're lucky, to decide how they'll be remembered. The early warning systems crunch impossible launch sequences and projected impact zones, offering a wave of data for heads of state that know there will be nowhere to hide. But whether they like it or not, they are still left with a choice, whether to fire back, retaliate in revenge, or vanish quietly into history. In Washington, the nuclear football opens and authorization codes are read aloud for the last time. The president has perhaps 5 minutes before command networks fail. In Moscow, the Shigat suitcase hums with alerts. Automated systems like Dead Hand prepare to unleash their last salvo even if every officer is gone. In Beijing, the Central Military Commission struggles to verify whether the West has truly launched or whether it's all an electronic mirage. In this scenario, there is no time to find out. The math wins and the missiles launch regardless. But nowhere is the decision more haunting than aboard the Royal Navy's Vanguard-class submarines, then patrolling the Indo-Pacific in silence, each carrying 16 Trident II D5 missiles, enough to erase 40 cities. The crew can't call home. They rely on a simple test, tuning in to the daily BBC Radio 4 broadcast. If the broadcast of the Today program ever stops, they open the sealed letter of last resort, penned by each British Prime Minister on their first full day in office and locked in a safe inside the submarine's control room. Nobody knows what those letters instruct to those crews, whether to retaliate, stand down, or sail to an ally. But one day someone will have to open them, and for these crews that day has inexorably come at last. The submariners wait, hands hovering over the launch keys, listening to the static where Britain used to be. In major cities, those few who see emergency broadcasts rush towards subways and basements, clutching phones that no longer connect to anything. The surge of communication stresses cell towers to their absolute limit. Freeways come to a standstill as millions attempt to flee. Above them, contrails of white smoke crisscross the blue, each one carrying the explosive equivalent of a new sun. T+5 minutes. At 5 minutes, the first warheads arrive. They fall faster than sound, invisible, until the air itself begins to scream. The world's priority targets, the epicenters of civilization, vanish both simultaneously and immediately. Washington, D.C., Moscow, Beijing, London, Paris, each are erased in less than a second. In their place, expanding spheres of plasma, brighter than the sun, bloom over the Earth's surface, devouring everything within a 2-mile radius. The fireballs rise into the stratosphere, pulling the ground upward in liquid form. Shockwaves blast outward at 1,000 miles per hour, crushing everything within 10 miles. Steel girders bend like toy wire, and skyscrapers collapse like sandcastles. Thermal radiation ignites everything that can burn up to 20 miles away. Trees, cars, clothes, people, and asphalt all liquefy in an instant. Shadows are seared into the pavement where humans once stood. The physics of destruction varies with altitude. Ground bursts are notorious for hurling millions of tons of radioactive soil into the air, contaminating everything downwind. Air bursts detonated higher up dole out destruction by maximizing shock and heat over wider areas, perfect for eviscerating cities. Within seconds, tens of thousands of people at the world's first ground zeros turn to carbon vapor. Farther out, victims' skin blisters and melts to the extent that even those miles away suffer third-degree burns. Supersonic debris turns the air into a storm of razors effectively. Buildings themselves become projectiles, a scene replicated scores of times across the world's doorbell cameras, whose feeds somehow survive the blast. The domino effect is very real after the blast. Nuclear power stations rupture from nearby blasts, releasing plumes of radioactive steam. Refineries ignite, their tanks exploding like fuel-air bombs. Toxins spew into the burning sky from chemical plants hit in the blast. Then there's the host of buried gas lines, superheated and bursting as city blocks are engulfed in secondary firestorms. T plus 30 minutes. In just 30 minutes, tens of millions are dead, vaporized, crushed, or burned beyond recognition. Millions more stagger through ruins with fatal radiation exposure, their skin glowing faintly from the fallout. Hospitals, fire stations, police networks are all gone, and there is no rescue helicopters, no emergency broadcasts, or governments left to respond. Global leadership effectively crashes. New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, gone. St. Petersburg and Moscow, erased. Tokyo, Delhi, Seoul, Tehran, London, Paris, and Berlin are craters, heat, and ash. It's impossible to know how many millions have perished as the fires continue to spread. It's the first time in history that the skylines of these major capitals have all glowed orange at once. The electronic aftershocks of the explosions have a life all their own. High-altitude detonations create electromagnetic pulses strong enough to fry everything with a circuit board. EMPs hit planes, hospitals, and residential areas with impunity. Power grids collapse like dominoes. Airplanes lose avionics mid-flight, some of them falling out of the sky like dark streaks, others searching vainly for viable places to land off the cuff, so far from home. The internet and phones all blink out forever. Humanity in the strike zones have all just gone offline. Down below, the firestorms continue their feeding frenzy. Thousands of smaller blazes merge into single city-sized infernos. Flames consume oxygen faster than the wind can replace it, creating hurricane-force cyclones of superheated air and debris, known terrifyingly as fire tornadoes. Temperatures can reach almost 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit as asphalt runs like tar and glass drips from skyscraper frames like candle wax. The fires cause people miles from the blast zones to suffocate as oxygen is vacuumed from the air. The forecast will simply read fire for the foreseeable future. By the time the first fireballs bloom, the planet has already decided to finish the job. What began as targeted counterstrikes turned within an hour into a global sacrament of escalation. Every retaliatory mechanism, every automated protocol, every desperate human order is all triggered at once. T plus 1 hour. Submarines at patrol depths receive authenticated release codes. Intercontinental ballistic missile crews pull 2-man locks and turn launch keys. Bombers that matter are already airborne, navigating the maelstrom of catastrophe unfolding across the Earth. Most deliverables are missiles now, and all of them are about to rain down in multiples over the rest of the Earth. Within this phase, the arsenal's empty. SLBMs splash skyward from every oceanic patrol, some arriving at coastlines in as little as 10 minutes. ICBMs will take another 10 to 20 minutes to arrive. Mutual destruction is virtually guaranteed. By the end of the next hour, something on the order of 12,000 warheads, the sum of the world's stockpiles, will be airborne all at once. T plus 3 hours. 3 hours in, half of the world is still waking up to its own funeral. The mushroom clouds have climbed to the edge of space, turning the upper atmosphere into a boiling bruise. Deep inside those clouds, pulverized cities mix with vaporized soil and irradiated ash. Gravity makes things even worse, as radioactive fallout begins to fall like snow glittering faintly in the dawn. It's oddly beautiful, if annihilation could be beautiful. Invisible, odorless, and utterly lethal, the dust drifts into the jet streams, spreading contamination hundreds of miles from the blast zones. Survivors are still discovering that survival is relative. Those who somehow manage to reach deep military shelters or Cold War bunkers are, for now, the lucky few. But safe has an expiration date. Filters will clog and air supplies will dwindle. It's an inevitability. Rations only designed to last a few weeks are suddenly the most valuable currency left on Earth. Millions stumble through ruins with nausea, burns, and bleeding gums, the first signs of acute radiation syndrome. There are no hospitals left, no morphine, and certainly no clean water. Rivers sparkle faintly with cesium. Every sip is a roll of radioactive dice. Soon, even more civilizational infrastructure will join in on this party of destruction. Undersea cables snap in molten trenches, satellites detonate in orbit, scattering space debris at 17,000 miles per hour. GPS is gone, air traffic control is gone, banking is gone. As the next wave of nukes scream towards targets spread far beyond national capitals, they clear command centers and missile fields. These strikes are expressly designed to choke the arteries of civilization. Ports, refineries, grain hubs, shipping canals, major dams, electric superstations, railroad junctions, and satellite farms, all the things essential to sustain modern life, have been studied and integrated into contingency plans decades ago. Space will not be spared either. Anti-satellite weapons and high-altitude detonations blind satellites and turn low Earth orbit into a lethal minefield. The result is absolute saturation. Firestorms from adjacent blasts merge into continent-spanning infernos. EMPs and blast damage collapse grids simultaneously across hemispheres. The world's GPS and comms die in unison. The environment itself is turning feral. The fires have no borders now. Entire regions are burning unchecked. Their chemical plants and industries pouring toxins into the air in billows of toxic smoke. In India and China, the smoke columns from hundreds of cities merge into an unbroken band visible from orbit. Nuclear reactors, abandoned or damaged by shockwaves, are beginning to melt down, adding their own isotopic signatures to the global poison cocktail. The sun dims behind a layer of soot and fallout. Night falls prematurely over half of the planet. Day 1. Immediate fatalities number in the hundreds of millions, cascading into billions as infrastructure failures, radiation, and secondary explosions bite. In a matter of a few hours, the world has been re-engineered into a planet where organized governance is impossible. The launches stop only because there's nothing left to launch from, and because every last authorized finger has already done its dreadful duty. By the end of the first day, global civilization has been replaced by a scattering of terrified pockets, each convinced they are the last ones alive. Outside, the world burns in silence except for the crackle of fire and the soft hiss of fallout. Day 2. The planet is now wrapped in a shimmering, invisible shroud. Jet streams drag the fine dust of annihilated cities across every longitude. The atmosphere itself has become a slow-moving tide of poison. Within 2 days, fallout patterns circle the globe. Scandinavia glows from American dust. Meanwhile, Australia and South America, located in what was long considered the safest hemispheres on Earth, register radiation spikes well higher than normal. Inside bunkers and basements, radiation sickness arrives in waves. Families double over with nausea and fever. Skin starts to blister. Hair falls out in clumps. Within days, it'll only get worse. Internal bleeding, organ shutdown, infection. These people are on an island. They can't see a doctor. They can't get a blood transfusion. There's little way to ease the pain. In most cases, the suffering will be tended to by the dying. Some shelters resort to grim mercy by locking the sick inside rooms to conserve air. Others simply go quiet one by one until only static remains on their emergency radios. Those who can still stand and move freely contemplate their options for long-term sustenance. They are mostly grim. Bottled water is traded like gold. Rivers and lakes now carry the glowing silt of vaporized infrastructure. Desalination plants are wrecked. Even rain barrels, once a symbol of self-reliance, fill with death from the sky. Food is no better. Crops are coated in cesium dust. Livestock carcasses rot on contaminated soil. Starvation follows radiation in lockstep. Gunfire begins to replace conversation, as every can of beans is measured against life itself. Day 4. Wildfires are now raging uncontrollably across the earth. Deer, cattle, elephants, and any animal too big to hide and too slow to adapt are all dead in days. Only insects thrive, their hardened DNA resisting the gamma rays. Across the coasts, oceans die quietly, slicked with oil and radioactive runoff. Coral reefs bleach white and fish wash ashore in vast drifts, while seabirds fall from the sky mid-flight. Day 7. By the end of the first week, the world is no longer divided into nations or allies. There's only inside and outside, the living and the soon-to-be dead. And outside, the fallout falls endlessly, a snow that never melts. Week 1. After the first week, the world becomes a planet-sized chimney. Roughly 12,000 nuclear detonations, or the combined yield of all human arsenals, have thrown millions, if not billions of tons of soot and pulverized carbon into the stratosphere. That's more than the asteroid impact that ended the dinosaurs, and higher than any cloud humans could reach or wash away. The black veil circles the globe in days, turning the blue atmosphere into a dirty orange haze. Sunlight drops by 90%, and Earth is gradually plunged into an artificial night that stretches across continents. Even at noon, the sky looks like dusk over a coal mine. Temperatures plummet, and for good reason. Decades of scientific models have suggested an average global cooling of 25 to 35 degrees Celsius in the temperate zones, and even steeper plunges near the poles during the onset of a nuclear winter. Summer wheat fields in Kansas freeze solid. The Sahara's sand hardens with frost. Rain turns to sleet, sleet to snow, and snow to silence. The oceans cool from the top down, trapping heat beneath a layer of icy sludge. Photosynthesis all but halts. Mid-July in the hottest parts of the globe now feels like mid-January everywhere else. Humanity's great fire has created its own ice age. Week 2. The agricultural collapse is total. Crops die from darkness, not drought or heat. Leaves yellow, then blacken. Soil microbes suffocate in the cold. Cows starve, then freeze where they fall. Fisheries vanish as plankton dies off, the food web collapsing from the bottom up. The few remaining pockets of greenery, those under grow lamps or greenhouse glass, will soon run out of power. Week 3. Inside bunkers, the starvation crisis accelerates. The old survival manuals never mentioned that canned goods expire faster when you can see your breath indoors. The cans bulge or even explode, compromising the seal. Disease follows hunger hand in hand, and infection spreads through weakened bodies. Some choose cannibalism, others choose not to wake up. Either way, the psychological collapse is as total as the ecological one. Humans are wired for sunrise, for cycles, for meaning. Now their radios are static and time itself feels broken. Some survivors walk into the snow and never come back. Others hold on out of reflex, whispering prayers to a sky that no longer hears them. Month 1. The world burns in slow motion as time creeps by. Global temperatures have plummeted, a planetary crash nobody signed up for. Oceans remain frozen at the edges, and tropical storms now become blizzards. Want to collect rainfall to drink? Too bad. When it falls, it's acidic enough to strip paint off of a truck. The ozone layer is so mangled that a short walk in daylight now gives a 3rd-degree sunburn. All of that is to say that Earth is now suffering the climate equivalent of a nervous breakdown. Month 6. Food eventually becomes extinct, and with that, the majority of the remaining humans die of starvation. People can't farm, they can't grow crops, there's no sunlight. The soil is poisoned effectively or frozen hard to the extent that the proud survivors of the first month are now fighting over cans of creamed corn that expired years ago. Even remote outposts like Antarctic researchers and South Pacific Islanders start to realize they have just won the world's most depressing lottery. They get to starve last. With sanitation gone and immune systems wrecked by radiation, cholera, typhus, dysentery, and cancer rage. Infections become terminal. Paper cuts are basically obituaries in progress. The seas continue to acidify as nuclear winter sets in. Phytoplankton, the ocean's oxygen factories, die en masse. Without them, the atmosphere loses balance. The planet begins its long, slow self-suffocation. Forests will soon collapse, pollinators will vanish, and humanity's last major contribution to the biosphere is a 6th mass extinction. This one proudly homegrown. Year 1. A year in, and the nuclear strikes are ancient history. Fewer than 50 million humans remain, most sick, mutated, and spiritually bankrupt. Underground shelters creak under their own recycled air. Remote islands host small tribes that live off fish who glow at night, either divine providence or radiation, no one's sure anymore. The southern hemisphere fares slightly better. Patagonia, Tasmania, New Zealand are all basically still breathing, so better is measured in inches, not miles. Slowly, however, the atmosphere begins to clear, marginally. The soot settles and sunlight begins to limp back to half strength, leaving the first patches of blue sky to reappear like some forbidden miracle. It's a welcome sight to the remnant of humanity. Temperatures inch upward, but the ozone layer is so shredded that exposure to daylight remains lethal within minutes. Crops might grow again in 5 or 10 years, assuming anyone who's left remembers how farming once worked. The air smells of rust and iodine. The Earth is technically recovering, but that's like saying a corpse is cooling nicely. Everything once viewed as permanent is gone. The global infrastructure is irreparably damaged. The species count has been halved in the span of a single year. The human genome is bottlenecked to a handful of fragile survivors. And the Stone Age, it's back. 12,500 warheads were launched, a number so large it feels abstract. Each bomb erased away far more than cities. Supply chains, ecosystems, and people that once made the world work went with them. The destruction multiplies exponentially with each blast. Fires breed soot. Soot breeds ice. Ice breeds famine. And civilization dies in a violent chain reaction. You've seen what happens when every nuke on Earth goes off. But what if it started with just one? Watch What If USA Launched a Nuclear Bomb Minute by Minute to see how the world would react, or click on this video instead.